Hey there, this is Dolphin Doug in almost sunny Juneau, Alaska, sitting with a gang of four. A bronze statue. You can find many bronze statues like this around Juneau. This is at the Macaulay Salmon Hatchery, which is a couple of miles out of town towards the glacier. And you can certainly stop here at the hatchery. And I'd recommend, if you do, as you come to Juneau, there are bronze statues down by the cruise ship dock, etc. You really should gather your family together at any one of those bronze statues and try to take a picture with your family. I brought my dad down here with my kids, and it was a fond memory of having that photo by this bronze. My kids, if they get a copy of that picture, can come back here with their kids and do the same thing. It's a nice thing to be able to offer your children. But today I'm going to answer the question of how to see wildlife on your cruise to Alaska. I live here in Juneau, and I've got a little bit of inside knowledge because I do operate a whale watching tour company. I started it in 1994. I was the first guy to think of doing whale watching full-time here in Alaska, and the business has grown huge. So if you want to see some of our charismatic megafauna, meaning, friendly giant beasts, how do you do so? Well, let's start with that first one. If you want to see whales on your cruise to Alaska, you can think that you're going to see them from your ship, just as you might see a bear or an eagle or one of the other great critters up here. And while that happens all the time, the viewing opportunity from my experience with thousands of people that I have taken out whale watching is wonderful on the ship, but a factor of 10 better from a small boat. So my boats are smaller than many of the others that run out doing whale watching. The tour business that I basically was there at the beginning, and there are only a few old guys that are left that can say that. Whale watching, sometimes up to a third of the people on the ship want to go whale watching. I am a tiny slice of the overall business. There are lots of other operators. One of the great things about doing business in Alaska is most of the people up here are just good salt of the earth people. It's too small of a place to be somebody who takes advantage of people. So if you come out with my company, look up Dolphin Doug and you can come out with my people. If you go out with a competitor, you're probably going to have a great time too. Now that's in Juneau. Almost all the cruise ships stop in Juneau, and the ones that don't really get negative reviews from passengers because Juneau is just a really special spot. The other opportunity, other than Juneau, is Icy Straits Point. I call it Huna. It's a cannery in a town about 30 miles as the crow flies west of here, and it's a completely different experience than Juneau. But they have whale watching from there. Our whales go over to their area and theirs come back here. We don't look at the exact same spot, but they have a good chance of finding whales. I don't personally know which has a better chance, and actually nobody really does. The deal is, the reason Alaska and Juneau now has become this world-class destination. When I started, it was a known thing that whales are all over Southeast Alaska. It wasn't known that Juneau was a good spot. Back then, everybody wanted to go out to Point Adolphus, and you can still read about the whales at Point Adolphus. Huna actually goes and sees those whales some of the times. Sometimes they'll go other places. They're not stuck on one spot. But the deal is, from May through September, for years now, we've seen whales on every trip we've been able to complete. If we get blown out by weather, we can't make it out there. We cancel trips on an occasional basis. That sort of thing does happen. But when we've gotten there full time, we've been able to do it. Now today is a foggy day. It's perfect whale watching weather. It's October 15th, and I came here in 1993 on October 15th, and it was horrible weather, just like it was last night, just like it was the night before. And yesterday at about this time, it started drizzling for the rest of the day. If you come up to Alaska, this weather that I have right now is what you should expect. Sure, we get the sunshine. Sunshine's easy to deal with. It's right now, my truck says it's 43 degrees. If you come here in the middle of summer, it'll be probably 50 on a day like today. It's damp, the cold sinks into you, 50 degrees in this weather is tough if you're not dressed for it or used to it. On the other hand, if it ever gets to 60 degrees on the thermometer in Juneau, we are swimming in our ocean. We are peeling off layers. 60 degrees feels to us like you're 90. Now, if you come here on a 60-degree day and you're wearing long pants and a jacket, you probably won't take that jacket off. You won't need it, though. It's all relative. It is colder here. But we're talking about the charismatic megafauna. Gang of 4, you see the third little baby there. And we've got, good mamas. This is a brown bear. Here, you can see this. I'll switch to bears now. This is a brown bear skull. It's got a scooped out nose. A black bear has a Roman nose. You can't use the color of the bear because black bears can be brown, and we've even had some white bears around here. There used to be, if you get the tram is right downtown by the cruise ships. For 1 year, a mama had a white cub, a brown cub, and a black cub, and she was a black bear, and it was just beautiful. Anyway, to see bears, it's not nearly as easy to see. That whale's 100% viewing from May through September. They've extended the cruise ship season into April and October. It's so iffy that time of year weather-wise. It gets iffy with whales as well, so you might not want to do that if that's your priority. The tours might be cheap, but there's a reason everybody comes here May through September. So if you come spring and fall, I think there's a cruise ship coming in this coming Tuesday, and we've actually pulled all of our boats out of the water. It just isn't worth our time to stay in for the last ship. So I don't recommend you take those. If you do, you're still going to have a wonderful time. Maybe a competitor still has their boat in the water. So the whales are 100%. The bears are very, very iffy. There are exceptions. Now, I mentioned whale watching. I'm jumping around, and sorry for that. It must be the clean air or something. I want to finish the whales. You can go whale watching in Ketchikan and Skagway, maybe, but it's probably going to be a tour that doesn't really promise whales. Ask them if they guarantee it. Ask them what their success rate is. They'll probably honestly tell you. You can get a great whale watch show anywhere in Alaska, but your odds go down and you've got limited time. You're better off spending your time in those ports doing something else. Pretty much in Alaska, out of all the ports, you can't do everything everywhere. And I'll tell you one that Juneau's definitely missing. We've got the whales. For the bears, there's a Annan Creek Bear Observatory down closer, halfway almost to Ketchikan. And they'll fly you out by float plane to a place where you have a good chance of seeing bears. They're black bears. And black bears can be not this big. This guy's she's a little bit too big for me. I don't quite believe that size. This is a scary size. When you see these guys, you turn and go the other way, particularly if they're this brown bear, because they're going to have, with 3 cubs, and I've seen 3 cubs without mama. Those black bears, so it wasn't quite the same. I didn't want to be anywhere close. But Annan Creek is a beautiful black bear observatory, but the season is really short. The problem is the bears are there for the whale. Bears are there for the salmon, and the salmon only come at a certain time. They have to schedule the tour far in advance, but we don't know when the salmon are going to come back with a couple of week time window. So if you're going to go to Annan Creek, and if seeing bears, that's probably your best guaranteed bear viewing that I know of. There are lots of other hunt for bear trips. Icy Strait Points, Hoona has one. But it's a wonderful trip that you might see bears on. And that's kind of true on an awful lot of these tours. But the Annan Creek, you want to go during their peak season when they've got salmon in the creek, and that's when the bears are going to be around. If you get the chance, always go on an early or late departure. Middle of the day, oftentimes bears take a nap. It gets really warm. We have bears on a regular basis out near the Mendenhall Glacier. If you're stopping at the glacier, you can look for bears just as well. But you generally don't see them in the middle of the day on a hot day. And it's when the fish are in the creek that you mostly see them. So it's hit or miss. I've seen them in April, I've seen them in October, and every month in between. But it's hit or miss as whether you'll see them anywhere. Annan's better. Now the other opportunity is there's a couple of small outfits that were flying a single owner float plane down to a place called Pack Creek on Admiralty Island. And they generally fly from Juneau. They have to have a permit. It's a tiny little thing, and it's not sold through the cruise ships. That's a good place to see bears, and those are the big brown ones. Now, There may be other bear opportunities. To see them, you generally go on a tour, but they could pop up anywhere. We had a mama with 2 cubs. It was a black bear. Generally, you see black bears around people and brown bears out in the wild, but that's not a hard and fast rule. And she was right off the highway on half a dozen drives past with tourists, and I got to show them to her. So bears, one other thing with bears is please don't feed our bears ever, 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 never. Don't do it. Our bears, we shoot bears that don't treat people right. We're Alaskans. We're allowed to do that. We don't like doing that, and feeding bears is a quick way to make a bear that's going to get shot. So don't feed our bears. If you're in the woods and you're around bear country, it's useful to talk. Right now, there's no chance of a bear sneaking up behind me. But if one walked down the sidewalk behind me, I wouldn't care because that bear knows I'm here. And our bears in Juneau, we don't have bears that mess with people when they know you're here. Now, bears are dangerous. People worry about bears. But the reality is, lightning is dangerous, spider is dangerous, car crashes are really dangerous, falling off cliffs are dangerous. You don't worry about those things when you come to Alaska. If you're in a tourist area, be smart. Keep talking when you're moving. Enjoy a view. If you see a bear, it's funny, but the rangers at the Mendenhall Glacier say, don't run up on it. Because what happens is there's somebody ahead of you looking at the bear, you want to get past them, and before you know it, literally, people get this close to the bear. It doesn't happen very much anymore. The rangers are great at keeping people away. So, bears, that's number 2. The third one, and this one's easy, are eagles. Within a quarter mile of me, I would bet there are 2 eagles, probably sitting up in the trees over there. This fog makes it really hard to see them. Eagles are everywhere in southeast Alaska. There is a nest practically, or at least an observation perch, every mile of every coastline through southeast Alaska. All you have to do is open your eyes to see eagles. Best time to see eagles is actually early in the season and at low tide, when the eagles are hungry and they're waiting for the salmon to show up. It's the middle of October now, so the eagles are full of fat and they don't need to eat as much. There's not as much food around, but they've been feeding all summer and they're slowing down for the winter. But they still sit up on perches, they still fly around, we can still hear them with their ears. I'm not a very good singer, but it's a high-pitched, funny sound. You can pick out that eagle really quickly. The other bird that I strongly encourage you to enjoy when you see them are ravens. Ravens are massive black birds, not as big as an eagle, but if you had crows are just large black birds. If you had a raven sitting on your wrist, it would be a heavy thing if your arm was out. A crow, yeah, it's bigger than a parrot, but it's not a huge heavy thing. An eagle would drop you down. Ravens are just all black. They have a heavy set bill. If you ever see one beside a crow, you'll absolutely know that one's a raven. They also have a bunch of hair right at the edge of their bill. And so if you see that, that's a raven. They make lots of different noises, and they are extremely intelligent. Of course, all ravens look the same to me. Any raven that doesn't have a band on it, I can't tell it apart. But to a raven, they can tell every human as an individual. I have several dogs, and the ravens know me as being associated with dogs. Ravens don't have to see, they've got this incredible memory. They don't have to see you on a regular basis. They remember all these things. So ravens generally don't come close to me anywhere in town. They don't like strangers either, so you probably won't get all that close to them either. But I had a naturalist that worked for me. Her name was Ernestine Hayes, and she's semi-famous. She's written a book. She's a wonderful native Alaskan, and she had this soft, she's as American as any of us, but she had this soft, just naturalistic attitude to her that was just really remarkable. And so it was either the year before or the year after she worked for me. She lived out in Lemon Creek, which is 2 miles that way, and she worked downtown, which is 2 miles that way. And she would take the bus to and from work. And she lived about a half mile from the bus stop in Lemon Creek. And she walked along. As she was walking along to her bus stop, there are occasional ravens around, and she would, I believe, this is her story, not mine, but I believe she'd make a little funny noise, and she didn't have a dog, never had a dog, but she carried a bag, Ziploc with dog kibbles in her pocket. and she'd drop a dog kibble. Raven would wait till after they passed, eat the kibble. Dog kibble's #1 food. Ravens hang out around people. Ravens like McDonald's French fries. Dog kibble's in the top. That's something that's worth it. If somebody feeds their dog outside, guess what? There'll never be a scrap of dog food in there. The ravens will figure it out, and they'll come and eat it faster than the dog can. And they'll chase away the dog if the dog doesn't have guts. So anyway, Ernestine would do that, and then when she was downtown, it didn't take long at all before she could hear the ravens all talking, and she was the raven lady. They would make a funny noise, and they were teaching each other, and when she would hear that noise, she'd make eye contact with the raven and drop off a kibble someplace that she knew that raven could get it. She was not throwing it to the raven, she's just dropping it. And it was this beautiful interaction, and I heard this from her personally just in a conversation, and knowing her as a person who's just like, oh man, I mean, this is a downside to owning dogs, but it's like, wow. Now, I named one of my daughters Raven, so I've got very high regard to them. And Ernestine is one of those people who's just like, anyway, one of the great things, I need to say it more often and frequently, the great thing about coming to Alaska, we're talking about these guys and this wonderful, the thing that you really, really care about are the people. The people you meet up here, and Alaska's full of great people. Have a good time with them. So eagles, ravens, whales, bears. Let's go for some of the other ones. If you're on the water, you're going to see seals, sea lions, porpoise. You might see orca whales. All that is kind of included in the same whale tour. It's all part and parcel of the same thing. Any marine tour is going to show you any of that they can. You can see bears on the beaches. It's not a great way to try to find them. The other big ones. Let's go straight to wolf. Juneau used to have the world's greatest wolf. His name was Romeo. He deserves a story of his own. You can search him up on the internet. He has now passed. Your chance of seeing a wolf in Juneau is virtually zero. As I understand it, I haven't heard anybody from a helicopter that say they see wolves up there. They're around. I've heard there have been times in the past when some of the tour boats and my tour boats could see wolves on a certain island. It's just not something you're going to expect anywhere in Alaska to see. Wolves tend to avoid us. I have seen them running across the highway. It's just the chance of you repeating that are slim. Now the next one are moose and caribou. Juneau don't have either one. As far as I know, we're virtually the only place in Alaska other than Outline Island that don't have those things. We've got little tiny deer that are not impressive, little whitetail, and they're smaller than the stuff down south. Moose are magical, big, huge things. Caribou are kind of cute and interesting. If you get the chance to go see them, they're much more reliable to see than just about anything else that you're going to go hunting for. So if there's a tour that offers that, it's likely they can find you that. I'm not trying to put them under pressure. If they can't find it for you, that's life, that's Alaska. Moose, actually, from my perspective, are scarier than bears. I can suss out the brain of a bear, and like I said, they're bad bears. I generally aren't around them. So when I see bears, they're generally cleaned up, and you can just tell their personality what's going on in their head, or at least I can. Moose are different. Every once in a while, everything I've known is every once in a while, particularly in the wintertime, when they don't have much food and they're trapped on dog sledding trails, every once in a while they'll stomp a dog sledding team and maybe the musher. What's known is if you run into a moose on a dog sled team and it puts its ears whatever direction it's not supposed to, you leap out into the deep snow and run as fast as you can. You can't run, but you try to get out in the deep snow and all of your dogs try to do the same thing. The trail is his. If they take your sled, that's a cheap price to pay. So it's not that we're afraid of moose, and I have stood around moose, and it seems in hindsight maybe I shouldn't have been so close. But moose are magical. You see them from a bus, you see them they're just big, huge. You look at those things and think, well, if I was a wolf and I had to eat that thing, I think I'd go hungry. Caribou are a little bit smaller, different personality, you don't really know them. You can see them up in the interior. You're not going to see them from a cruise ship. You're not going to see them on your cruise. You might see them if you spend a couple of days in Anchorage, and you're really likely to see them if you take the inland tour and particularly wildlife tours to go see those. So that's pretty much. Now you got other things like wolverine, forget about it. I've seen the tracks through snow several times. I don't think you're going to be here that time of year. Muskox, well, you can go see those in a zoo. You can see any of these things in a zoo, but if you want to go see muskox in the wild, it's stinking hard to do. good luck with that. I hope you do. I think it's magical. You can see bear tours up in the interior of Alaska that don't have anything to do with a cruise ship. I'd recommend you can do those. McNeil River is famous, but it certainly isn't the only one. I'm a long ways from that stuff. Part of the problem with being a tour operator in Juneau is I should have been a heating mechanic, repairman, because then I'd be working in the winter and get my summers free. I don't have time in the summer to go explore and play nearly as much as you do. So the last one that I'm going to say is porcupine. See a porcupine, you are in luck. I love those fat little things. Of all the critters, it's the one you don't need to worry about. Human beings have this innate inability to approach a porcupine. Dogs have the same problem. They cannot approach a porcupine until you come up right behind them. They say, Dad, I got to do this. I don't know what this thing is. And yeah, I've had two porcupine, couldn't resist dogs. And you can hear the bark from a quarter mile away. I'm out in the woods having a wonderful time, and I know it's a porcupine bark, and I know I'm going to have to get that dog and haul him home, and he's going to be foaming out the mouth as happy as can be, and you got to pull the quills out, you got to take him to the vet. It's a big process, and it's just, what do you do? It's the best day in the dog's life, and these dogs, after 2 or 3 or 4 times, you realize, you'd think that they'd learn, but they're hard to resist. But from a human perspective, I've seen the most adorable little tiny baby porcupine that fit right in my hand, with this little tiny tail that goes flip, flip, flip. Oh yeah, I wanted to touch it, but do you think I could get close enough? The thing is, a porcupine cannot throw quills. It can swat its tail. And the thing is, if you touch the back of its tail, it's gonna go. But you gotta be nuts to do that. Absolutely crazy nuts, because everybody can see right off the bat, there's something going on, just like those dogs. I think porcupines are so adorable. You'll see them waddling along. You'll see them climbing up trees. You can get right close to them. Good luck with that. Anyway, that's my introduction to the wildlife when you're cruising in Alaska. Please come and see me and come whale watching with me when you're in Juneau. Please have a wonderful time in Alaska. Stay warm and dry, and I hope you have extra tufts.